I only know what I read in the papers. What can you tell us? What are you willing to tell us here about what kind of real progress the IDF is making against specific Hamas targets in such a way that might, bring this war to a reasonably swift end, if such a thing is possible? And then I guess my second part of the question is, if it drags on, do you foresee a day when there are conditions attached to U.S. aid?
Well, first, with respect to the progress that Israel's making, I'm mainly going to allow them to characterize that because they're up close and personal, obviously on the ground there, and we are not. So, I would prefer for them in their own voice to kind of lay that out for the public. But I'd make a couple of observations. The first is that in Gaza City, they have managed to identify and begin to neutralize a truly expansive network of tunnels that form the backbone of the military capacity of Hamas in the north. And they're working through, ways in which they are going to render those tunnels ineffective going forward. They have been able to take out senior brigade commanders, battalion commanders, company commanders, and a significant number of fighters. And now in the south, in Khan Yunis, that's really the beating heart of the Hamas leadership that has been located in that area. And so they're equally in a ground operation trying to get after the infrastructure that has supported the command and control for Hamas writ large overall, and are looking to neutralize that as well. Ultimately, they're going to continue to work at getting the most high-value targets, the authors of the horrible massacre on October 7th, including Sinwar and Deif and Issa, the top three Hamas leaders in Gaza. And they have not yet, obviously, gotten to them. So I think they can walk through the military progress they have made, and they can also walk through what they still intend to try to achieve. We have had detailed conversations behind closed doors with Israel, and I'll be going to Israel myself soon to have further conversations with the Prime Minister, the War Cabinet,
late this week,
the military.
Is that right?
I think we haven't announced it yet, but it's soon. But it's soon, very soon.
Twitter announced.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that conversation involves what is the duration of the high intensity element of this campaign going to be?
Yeah.
I think we can anticipate that over time, Israel will continue to search for and try to deal with the Hamas leaders if that takes more time. But in terms of the high intensity military operations of the kind we have seen in Gaza City and in Khan Yunis, we will be talking to them and have been, President Biden most recently with Prime Minister Netanyahu, about what their vision is for how long this goes on. But I think for now, those conversations are best left behind closed doors. And so I won't yet entertain the hypothetical in your question because we want to follow those conversations through.
Yeah. And aid?
That's what I mean by the hypothetical in your question.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, because you said if, then, et cetera. What I'm saying is we have chosen a strategy different from the one that you've kind of hypothesized in your question.
Yeah.
And we believe that strategy has allowed us to move the Israelis on humanitarian assistance to a pause that led to a substantial release of hostages. And we believe that kind of interchange, frank, honest, and largely behind closed doors, will put us in the best position to give our advice on questions like what the strategy is to move from high intensity operations to a different phase of this conflict.
So when the vice president was in Dubai, she met with a number of regional leaders. She spoke with some others on the plane coming back. She's been focused on the day after, no one can be sure when that day after is. There have been some estimates that the Israelis may try to wrap this phase of the operations up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But the day after, as the vice president describes it, involves a security solution, a political solution, an economic solution. The security solution involves somebody overseeing and stabilizing Gaza and to some extent the West Bank. The economic solution involves infusing money to rebuild a part of the world where 100,000 buildings have been destroyed and so forth. The political solution, particularly thorny because it almost necessarily implies a change in Israeli leadership and a change in the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, a revitalization of the leadership so that it can carry things forward to the next stage. How realistic do you think it is to be discussing such things now, and are the wheels turning in any of those areas?
When you say such things, you mean the military, political, and economic solution?
Yes.
I think it's not only realistic, it's imperative, which is why the vice president was engaged in the conversation she was engaged in. And she came back and reported to the president on both the opportunities, and there are real opportunities to come out the other side of this crisis and build something better going forward, and the very real obstacles and challenges for each of those. We have talked about an interim security solution in Gaza. That is easy to say, much harder to source and build and
Presumably
implement.
that's not Israeli occupation.
Well, we have said that we do not support continued Israeli occupation or reoccupation of Gaza. We would like to see an interim security solution other than that. And then the question is, what exactly does that look like? And we've had intensive conversations with regional partners, with the Palestinians, with the Israelis, and with others in the international community on that question. There are a lot of challenges that have to be worked through, but that only reinforces the notion that we've got to be having that conversation now, not waiting until actually the day after. Same thing goes on the economic piece of this. We have to begin thinking about not just where the resource is going to come from, but what are they going to go to? And how do you build that in a way that also has a revamped and revitalized Palestinian Authority prepared to be a partner in the deployment of those resources? And then finally, on the political solution, we've made no bones about where we stand on what the ultimate shape of that is. It's a two-state solution. And Israel and a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security. And the road to that, of course, as history has told us for decades, is not a straight one and is going to require overcoming a whole series of obstacles. But President Biden has set this out as a matter of principle. And the Vice President, Secretary Blinken, and others in our government have been engaging all of the various parties to talk about how we go from where we are now to that and what the right formula is to get there. But again, because of the complexity and the difficulty, we don't have a day to waste. And that's why having those conversations, even now, largely those conversations are taking place in private because they require the grappling with a lot of very complex and thorny challenges. But they are ongoing, and they have to be ongoing, and we're going to continue to drive them forward. And Vice President Harris, Secretary Blinken in particular, will play critical roles in that.
I'm going to ask a political question, a somewhat easier question, but I think it's something that everybody here would like to know your views on. Paint for us a picture of the world that you see if Donald Trump returns to the White House.
Oh no!
In Ukraine, in China, in the Middle East, and maybe other places that some of us aren't thinking about.
Look, I will let the former president lay out his own vision for what he wants to do in a second term. I really don't want to be in a position sitting here to characterize that. I would point out a couple of things, though. I think President Biden and the former president have very different views when it comes to the value of alliances and the role that alliances play in America's national security. And at the heart of our support for Ukraine has been a 50-nation coalition that we have built with American credibility and American capacity and the reach and resolve of a country that is able to mobilize that kind of effort on behalf of a fellow democracy. And I think you can see what the former president has said about that conflict and see he would take us in a much different direction. but I will stop there because I probably should not.
Oh, go on.
I think I'm in a better. I'm better advised to be cautious in my commentary on that issue and sort of leave it to others, especially to you two guys. I'd be much more interested in hearing what you guys have to say about that question than what I have to say.
I think you know what we have to say about that
we're
question.
we're pretty predictable.
We're pretty
on that
transparent on that.
Yeah.